Thanks all for coming, guys. Yeah, this is my first conference talk, so let's see how it goes. Yeah, so this talk is all about the lessons I learned building Audiocube, which is a 3D DAW. I don't come from a software development background. I came from music production, so this talk's probably not going to be as technical as a lot of the other talks here, but it's more about like the personal journey, the development lessons I learned, and the sort of business philosophy. And I hope it will give you a sort of overview of the technology, but also maybe inspire you to sort of take risks on projects that you've always wanted to build, but maybe have never given yourself the chance to. So yeah, just an overview of the talk. I'm just going to give you a bit about a background about myself and how I started the project. Then I'm going to talk about the development process itself. Then a software demonstration. Then some of the lessons that I learned from building and monetizing the software, and then outline some potential plans for the future, and then the Q&A. So a bit about myself and the project. So I was studying music production at DBS Bristol, which is a music tech university, basically. That's sort of where I really learned in depth about music production techniques, and there's a lot of sort of cutting edge educational music tech there. There was part of DBS, the university called DBS Pro, and that was where they helped students to work on commercial projects. So rather than just doing your uni work, you'd actually work on, commercial projects, things like film soundtracks, video games, albums. But what's most relevant to Audiocube in this story is we were working on this kind of new format of audio book that they were calling immersive audio books. So basically, rather than a traditional audiobook where it's just somebody narrating, you just have one voice or maybe multiple characters, the point of this immersive audiobook was to create a fully, you could almost think of it as like a movie, but without the image. So it would have sound effects, music, ambience, characters moving around, sound sources moving around. So it was a lot more immersive than a traditional audiobook. And at the time, the software and the tools that were available didn't quite enable me to achieve what I was envisioning. So I'm sure some of you have worked with immersive audio and all the software that's there, but some things that I found really difficult were, trying to build a 3D 360 immersive space on essentially a 2D interface, just using automation or like some plugin UI, which just felt really counterintuitive. It seemed like not the easiest way to control sounds in a 3D space. Like, the vision for the project was to have a fully immersive space with things moving. So obviously, a lot of these surround sound plugins, they let you move the sound sources, but you can't move the listener independently of the sources. So it just becomes an automation nightmare if you're trying to achieve this like fully moving scenery. And at 2020, so obviously it was lockdown, had a lot of time, and I just had the maybe naive idea of, okay, I'm just going to try and make a 3D DAW. Given that I'd never made software before and I was just like a music production kid, so it was just, very perhaps naive, but at the same time I had a lot of time, and the tools that existed just didn't help me achieve the vision that I had. So yeah, as I said, the issues with the existing tools were the interface was a big one. The sort of way that you'd have to mix we were envisioning like not only the movement of sounds, but the spatialization of the audio, the acoustic rooms. I could see in my head like there would be some way of having this singular piece of software that could manage all of it. So it could do acoustic simulation, it could do spatialization, it could do, have a better 3D interface for panning and height, depth, things like that. So that was part of the vision. Also, the fact of it being in a 3D engine itself means that it opens up a huge range of other possibilities, not only for like the sort of hardcore or technical spatialization, acoustic stuff, but also composition in general, because it opens up, like, I guess you could say, a new dimension of ways of interacting with sound, because in a 3D engine, obviously this is built in Unity, so you can use physics, collision, movement, different ways of interacting with sound. So not only was it like the vision to have a sort of 3D spatialization tool, but also a 3D instrument in itself that gave you new ways of creating music and sound. A lot of inspiration at the time actually came from like certain video games, like those kind of Zoo Tycoon type top-down builders, where it's like you can sort of place things around, create the world, but then obviously I'd wanted it to be the sonic version of that. The initial scoping, and I think with any project, things really change over time. So what I envisioned at the start isn't necessarily where it is now. And the other day when I was preparing for this talk, I was just like digging back through all my notes, and I found some notes from 2020 that were like this big list of things that I wanted to include and seemed like a good idea. And then now I'm like, why was I even thinking of attempting those? But then these were the sort of real core features that I wanted to include. So for starters, I didn't want it to just be another plugin, because I thought that would kind of be too limiting in the overall collection of tools that I wanted to include. So it did need to be standalone software. Obviously, it would need traditional DAW tools, file import, browsing, export your audio, timeline sequencing, just to be able to precisely organize and trigger samples and sounds and stuff. Audio effects and processing, so that's all your your typical audio effects like reverbs, delays, choruses, ways to color and manipulate the sound. And obviously also being cross-platform was important to me. Not only Mac and Windows, but also I did and do still envision sort of having tablet and mobile versions of the software. Obviously, the interface would need to be a bit different, and we'll talk about that later on. But something that could be completely cross-platform. The next kind of core element was the 3D positioning tools. So like I wanted something that would give completely free placement of sound sources, so height, depth, anywhere in a 360 space. And then also completely free movement of the listening position itself, which I found was obviously, as I mentioned earlier, like no plugin really enabled that unless you had just disgusting amounts of automation. I mean, maybe there are things now, but I still haven't really found anything that achieves that. Then the acoustic simulation stuff. So I wanted to be able to create custom rooms. So rather than, I mean, there are some reverb kind of tools that have this kind of functionality, but create custom rooms with, set your own walls, build the spaces, simulate reflections, occlusion, other acoustic phenomena, which there wasn't particularly, at the time, there wasn't kind of tools specific for audio producers that enabled that. Obviously in game engines like Unity and Unreal, that kind of technology existed, but I don't think that's particularly accessible to musicians and producers. I mean, that's like game dev stuff. Modeling of acoustic surfaces. So, I wanted to be able to have rooms that were more reflective, simulate, bricks, wood, carpet, just so to give complete control over like an acoustic space, just to be able to create more immersive experiences. Binauralization and spatialization, obviously, is important to not only be able to create the experience, but also make it shareable. So obviously binauralization helps with getting that spatial perception on headphones. The spatialization technology for multi-channel output is still in progress, so it's not completely surround capable yet, but I mean, it's on the way. There's just issues with managing different audio cards and stuff like that. Experimental production techniques, so physics, gravity, collision, randomization, generative sequencing. So I wanted it to just be kind of like something that all the other DAWs aren't. I didn't just want to make another traditional DAW with, all the standard stuff. It wanted to be something a bit different. Something that worked in a different way. So after having these ideas, I was thinking, okay, what's the best way of doing this? I never made software before. I was just a music producer, so I thought, at the time I was researching, how could this be done? Obviously, a game engine seemed like the best kind of framework for it. So it was like either Unreal, Unity, or some custom C++ thing with OpenGL or something like that. Obviously, as a complete programming noob, the C++ thing wouldn't be a great idea. And I ended up setting on Unity just because of the cross-platform ability of it, and just sort of the simplicity of it. Also the lower graphics requirements, because I think Unreal is sort of generally aimed at more high fidelity graphics, which requires more powerful GPUs. I mean, I might be wrong on this, but I think Unity can be much lower resolution. And while this is a 3D app, it's for audio, it's not necessarily supposed to require like a high-powered graphics processor in your computer. The early days, it was just a lot of experimentation, a lot of prototyping, a lot of learning actually how to make software. So we'll just have a look through some prototypes. This was the first one. I couldn't actually find the video. This is just some old picture I had on a blog post, but it was basically, I was just learning how you could move objects in a 3D space, literally just learning the fundamentals. So these I mean, you can't really tell, but it's like, that's a cymbal, that's a kick drum, and I think the little metal ball was a snare, and you could like drag them around and it would bounce around, and each time it collided, it would make a sound, it would trigger the sound based on the velocity of the collision. So this is like completely, quite horrific early days stuff. I mean, you'll see, I mean, it's nice looking back through to see the progress from where it started and where it is now, because it has been in development for 5 years, and obviously I've leveled up a lot as a developer. 2021, this was when I started getting more comfortable with Unity and what was possible. Started to be able to add controls for audio effects using just the built-in audio effects and processing stuff. Worked on a system that allowed me to capture the audio output and record it to a file. Started learning more about, the fundamentals of programming, so I could load files in through the software itself, just to make it more functional. And it was at this time, I think obviously it was pre-AI, so I was learning everything through YouTube videos and just asking on like Reddit and Substack and things like that. And I knew nothing about programming, so I'd ask questions and people would be like, pretty much anything is possible in Unity, which at the time I didn't sort of realize it, but I think you can. I mean, if you're working in 3D stuff or even 2D stuff, obviously it has its. You do run into issues with working in a pre-existing engine like Unity rather than building something from scratch. But it speeds things up a lot, and you can really achieve pretty much anything in it. Especially because you can interface it with other programming languages, so it doesn't all have to be in C#. Yeah, in 2023, or maybe 2022 actually, I sort of started hitting walls with it and just getting kind of lost with the purpose of the software. I think, and I think in hindsight, what the issue was that I wasn't sharing it really with other people. It was kind of like just my personal project. And I think, as I'll explain a bit later on, like going public earlier would have probably helped me get past this phase. But yeah, it's like I was running into issues with programming things that I just couldn't do, getting sort of lost with the purpose of it. As you can see, it's kind of looks a bit confusing. Yeah, and then in 2023 and 2024, I think would have been at the end of 23, was obviously when ChatGPT started to offer programming, or was, the programming stuff came out, which was obviously very helpful and helped me to get over like these big hurdles that I had. Using AI for programming is like probably a conference in itself. We could talk about it, so I'm not going to go into too much depth there. But I mean, it really helped me, not only like writing certain bits of code itself of things that I couldn't understand, but also helping me to understand concepts that before I'd have struggled with. And also, I think the main thing is like just surfacing information that you're looking for. It just makes it really easy to find. I mean, obviously, you don't want to rely on it too much and lose your skills as a programmer. I think it's always best to write things manually, but as a research tool, it really helped me. Yeah, I also spent a bit more time learning about like the graphic design stuff, how to create better looking UIs, which I will explain a bit more in detail, because even this, whilst it's come a long way from like the early version, is still like a long way behind where it is now. Yeah. So, yeah, maybe this is slightly the wrong order, but sort of at the similar time of this, I started exploring other programming and development avenues, and I think this was something that also really helped me accelerate my skills, was kind of working on other projects. So I started making like weird little video games. I mean, I don't know if you can really see it there, but just some like VHS zombie game. Working on like some AI stuff. I mean, these projects are all linked on the website, so if you want to find out more, you can just check them out afterwards. And then this one on the bottom right is a sort of visual synthesizer where you can just draw in. It's kind of a mix between Microsoft Paint and an FM synth. So you draw in the frequency and the color and the depth of the paint, like defines how it sounds. So it's just like a different project. And I think, while I was just doing this subconsciously, I recently saw an interview or a quote from, I think it's one of the guys from Google, and it was talking about the way they spend their budget is 70, 20, 10. So you spend, and obviously they're talking about, how they spend their money. But for me, I think this is a good way to how you should spend your time as a developer or any sort of project you're working on. It's 70% spend on the main project. Spend 20% of your time working on things that are kind of closely related but not directly related to it. So for instance, the synthesizer stuff. And then 10% just working on things that are completely unrelated to your project at all. I think it just helps with like your development skills, your progression. Helps you become more rounded. So 2024 in March is when I first publicly launched the software, which in hindsight was probably a bit later than I should have, but obviously these things just happen the way they do. So the way that I launched it was I started by contacting music tech blogs. I think it was Bedroom Producer blog or something like that. So just quite small website, and just shared a post saying, new software, first 50 people, a beta test for this new software, first 50 people will get a free account. And the guy was like, oh, why are you limiting it to 50 people? And I said, well, just do it anyway. I'm not really limiting it to 50 people, but obviously that created a bit more urgency for people to sign up. So I think in the end it was like nearly 300 people signed up for the beta. So I think that's just like one little lesson of, I mean, it's probably common knowledge in marketing and that kind of thing, but you know, that sense of limited supply will make people a bit more excited about trying stuff. So yeah, I got around 300 initial signups. And this was a really important part of the learning process, was just first of all getting feedback on the software itself from outside of my own bedroom, basically. A lot of criticism, which obviously was hard, but it was also the most valuable feedback that I got, because it helped me realize, you know, all the things that were wrong with the software, like why weren't people using it, why people didn't like it. And there was a lot of stickiness with things like making accounts, downloading it, getting logged in, the support. So this is when I sort of realized the importance of having, I mean, this might be a term already, I don't know, but like a 360-degree product. So rather than it, you know, focusing purely on the software itself, there are so many other elements to a product that create the value for the customer. So, you know, not only does the app itself have to be really good, but the support has to be really good. Like the customer support, you know, don't just use some AI bot, but have them talk to you directly. Really good tutorials, really good website, good videos, good social media. All of these things are part of the product, even though it's easy to just focus on like the actual technology itself. I think you have to split your time equally amongst everything. And I've had a lot of conflicting advice about this as well. Like some people who I've worked with said, the product is the most important thing, the tech is the most important thing, and just let it market itself. You know, if it's good enough, then word of mouth will spread. Other people have said, you can have a shitty piece of technology, but if you market it well, you're still going to profit. But I think ultimately it's a mix of the two. So, you know, the marketing and the external things have to be just as good as the technology. So yeah, this is what the software looked like when it launched. It looks quite cute there. Very different to where it is now. So yeah, another really important thing was adding analytics to the software. So having telemetry built in so I could see how people were using it. Not only for like the business stuff, like total accounts made, but how many sessions people were having, how long people were spending on it. And this graph was quite a nice one, which shows the flow of how people interacted with the software. So each kind of thing you can do had an event that got fed into a database. And then this interpreted the database to show, okay, so people typically start off by starting a session, obviously, and then the next highest event is creating a sampler, and then you can kind of see the different branches that people take and where people get stuck and what kind of things people are using the software for. And again, the back end stuff was just feeding events to a database, logging with timestamps, but then the front end dashboard for both of these was just created with Gemini, I think, basically. So, you know, it looks really nice, it's really useful, but it didn't really take that long to create. But it made a huge difference to just understanding how people were using the software, where people were getting stuck, and what things needed to be fixed. So the start of 2025 was when I started to get a bit more traction publicly, started getting more users, a lot more feedback. AI tools started getting a lot better for programming. So obviously there was this sort of rapid phase of acceleration of the quality of the software. Yeah, not only using the tools, but getting more feedback. I think that was clearly the most important thing, was like not just to have it as my own idea, but, you know, really listening to what people wanted and implementing that. Because as much as you think you know best, like at the end of the day, they're the people who are paying for your software. You're not, you know, you can build something for yourself and that is important, but if you want people to buy it and use it, then you have to listen to them. Yeah, a similar time, obviously with the AI stuff, I was using AI to make a lot of the artwork for the marketing and stuff. But then I saw this post on Instagram, like, why are you letting AI do the fun part for you? Like, you should learn how to make art. And I think, you know, it's easy to just get ChatGPT to generate some imagery. But one thing that really helped me, I think, to create a more cohesive vision and aesthetic for the software and the marketing side of it, was just learning how to make art digitally. I mean, there's loads of good courses. And yeah, obviously AI is very quick, but if you learn how to make it yourself, then you have full control. So yeah, this is, I'm just going to go through these quickly. So this is kind of, that's just the date of the version of the software. So that was the end of last year. Started adding, you know, taking inspiration from other software, just really zooming in on the way they built their UI, taking influence from that. So adding a lot more features. I started adding more acoustic simulation stuff. I think, yeah, we should have time for a demo still. Working out, you know, how to have better spatialization, this kind of stuff. Yeah, and I think things really took off at sort of halfway through this year. Again, you know, I leveled up as a developer. You know, the interface, as you can see, is like changed so much from the early days. It's become a lot more unified, a lot more consistent. And then this is the current build, which, I mean, I think, you know, there's arguments over form and function, and I think clearly a lot of effort has gone into the form of this. Equally, the function. I mean, you know, I mean, I'm a bit of a sucker for a nice-looking piece of software, as many of us are. So I think this is why all the analog plugins sell so well. I think there's something really important about having a user interface that looks nice and isn't just like some horrible stock slider. And I think it adds a lot of value to the software and helps people sort of understand how to use it by being intuitive, but also just looks nice to use, and it's just kind of more encouraging. So yeah, these are just a few screenshots of the current version, which we will now have a look at the demo. So hopefully, yeah, there is some issues with the scaling of the UI when playing on different devices. So just create a blank project. See that the volume is all right on this. These is stereo, right? I think. So as you can see, you just have full 360 movement, and this is all fully spatialized. I'm still working on surround integration, so currently it only comes out of stereo speakers. I think, is that coming out stereo? Yeah. And yeah, when you have binauralization enabled on headphones, it's like very 360. I mean, I can only really recommend that you try it out yourself. So how long have we got? Yeah, you can move sources around. It has, depth. You can switch the listening position to sort of an external microphone, so rather than it coming from the camera. Yeah, I won't show you all the standard stuff, but it's got a MIDI sequencer for just sequencing MIDI notes, but obviously that's kind of a fairly standard tool. Probably the most notable things are the way that you can create acoustic environments and surfaces. So when you enable, there's the traditional or the stock Unity audio engine, but this HD spatializer is a custom one that uses like a bunch of different stuff to simulate acoustics. And yeah, so you can create kind of different rooms. I mean, it's a bit fiddly on a trackpad, but and then it actually simulates the reflections and the occlusion and absorption and stuff like that. And you can visualize it as well, which is quite nice. It just shows you how the sounds are like bouncing around and stuff. So, it's pretty good at what it does. I mean, there's still a lot that I'd like to enable. Like, I'm still working on the surface simulation stuff. So, simulating different materials. Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of other stuff in there. I mean, I don't think I'll have time to show all of it, so I would just recommend checking it out. Like, you can, there's a sine wave. So these are obviously all spatialized. Yeah, so obviously after 5 years, there's like a lot of different things in here that you don't really find in traditional DAWs. This is one of my favorites, which is there's a system for connecting. It's for generative sequencing stuff. Because as I was saying, working in 3D lets you play with sound in a completely different way than you would be able to achieve with traditional 2D DAWs. So obviously you could have this kind of node-based generative sequencing in 2D, but then it's nice to have it all mixed in with the other 3D stuff. So this software is really good at making immersive, like ambient music. Split. Sorry, I should have probably made one of these earlier. So it can kind of randomize. I mean, also it's probably not sounding like the best selection of pitches, but yeah, I mean, you can connect these different logic nodes together in like endless ways, really. And then when you mix that with the acoustic simulation stuff. It can be quite fun. And then you also have like effect zones where any sound any sound source that goes into it is processed with the effect. Yeah, I mean, I won't go into too much detail there. Yeah, there's a bunch of other stuff. But yeah, I mean, as you can see, very different to traditional DAWs in what it enables. Oh yeah, and you can record your audio and just export it. Yeah, I mean, obviously this is just a bit of a rushed project, but some people have made some really interesting stuff in it. Yeah, you just stop and then yeah, it just comes out as a WAV file like that. If you enable binauralization, obviously it will have the 360 kind of perception on headphones. Let's go back. So yeah, reflections on the software. There's a lot of things that I like about it. As you can see, it has come a really long way from the start. I still think there is, you know, a lot more to do. Part of the, you know, being such a big project, it's easy to sort of get disillusioned. So I think if you're working on something like this, have a to-do list, but then when you tick that off, put it on a done list, so you can keep track of everything you have done, because it's easy to sort of get disillusioned. Yeah, I probably said it already before enough, but yeah, really listen to your customers. Yeah, monetizing it, you know, again, this could be a whole talk in itself, and a lot of people have done talks here about monetizing. I think my biggest piece of advice is, you know, if you're working on something solo, just play into your strengths. Obviously, I built this on the side of having a full-time, well, I was doing freelance music tech marketing for other companies. Basically, my area of expertise was blogging and SEO. So that was how that was the niche of monetization that I understood. So that's how I focused. I don't really get the whole social media thing. I'm not really a fan of doing it, but obviously some of you will be. So yeah, just play into whatever is the best that suits your style of working. Yeah, I mean, some of the reflections on the journey itself, I think undertaking a project like this is a big, well, I think about the risk and the reward. The main thing, I don't think, yeah, we'll have to go to questions in a minute, but you know, often people don't take risks because they're too scared of the consequences, and I think that holds back a lot of innovation, holds back people a lot in general. And I think, you know, if you have ideas for a project that you want to undertake, really think about why you're not doing it. You know, what is the risk? What is the biggest failure that could happen? You know, are you going to die? Are you going to end up in prison? Are you going to end up broke and homeless? Like, probably not. You know, I think the main risks people think about are time and money. Like, oh, you spend years working on a product that ends up being pointless. But the reward of that is that you have learned those skills, and it could be a profitable thing. Another risk is like stability and security. So like mental stability and security in your life. So obviously, if you want to build a project and you're also working a full-time job, like obviously you're going to have to make sacrifices in what you do with your time. You know, everybody has, you know, there's this expression, we all have 24 hours in a day, but obviously some people have other commitments. So, you know, that's a risk. And yes, the risk of success is something that I sort of obviously I'd say that is the reward, but you need to think about how is your life going to change if the product does succeed, because my life is looking very different to where it was when I first launched the product, both in good and stressful ways. There's more pressure on me now that more people are aware of the product, so you have to think about that. Yeah, this is maybe getting a bit too deep into the philosophical things, but there's this common saying of "don't bite the hand that feeds you," and I think when it comes to working in, and then there's this adage of "unless it prevents you from feeding yourself," and I think there's this. I mean, this applies to lots of things. Jobs, it's easy to sit in a comfortable job, where you're just easily being fed, but then the opportunity cost of staying there rather than taking a risk, you might actually, if you have an idea that you believe in, you have a potential product that you believe could be successful, go for it. And don't just sit in your comfort zone, because that may be your biggest regret, is that you never tried it. And I think that's basically it. I think today, as an individual, you can really achieve anything. Think about all the tools we have available: computers, internet, AI. Everything is just there waiting to be used. There's never been a better time to make a tech product, I think, really. Like, obviously, we all have a huge advantage over everybody in history. And you can basically do anything if you set your mind to it. Future of Audiocube. I mean, we'll go to questions now, but multi-channel audio, tablet app, mobile stuff, online ecosystem, improved, all this stuff. I think that's it for now. Download it, email me, say hi. Thanks for listening.